Girmitiya refers to Indian indentured labourers brought by the British between 1879 and 1916 to work in colonies like Fiji, Trinidad and Mauritius, often under deceptive contracts. The term stems from Girmit, a mispronunciation of agreement, symbolizes the exploitative labour contracts signed after slavery was abolished.
छूट गया माँ बाप का दामन, छूट गया बचपन का आंगन, सहाय अपना अब कौन यहाँ है, आस का दामन छूट चला है, आस का दामन छूट चला है, आस का दामन छूट चला है।
The islands of Fiji, with their stunning beauty and tranquil shores, holds a hidden history, a story of pain, sacrifice, and survival. The land we see today was shaped not only by its indigenous people, but by those who arrived with hope in their hearts, only to find themselves trapped in the cold grip of exploitation. The British needed laborers for the growing sugar industry, and once slavery had been abolished, they turned to indentured labor as a solution, an agreement for years of hard labor in exchange for passage to places like Fiji, Trinidad, Mauritius, and Guyana.
My father was born in Jaunpur, in the district of Jaunpur, in India, which was basically, I think it was called United Provinces or something. In 1905, he migrated from India to Fiji at the age of 18. He landed in Fiji in the latter part of 1905. So he did his 5-year Girmit in Lautoka. He worked in 3 different spheres. First, he worked for a while, though not for long, on the farm. Secondly, he worked on what they called the Butongo Junction. They were laying the railway lines there. Sometimes he worked there. And then, the greater part of his 5-year Girmit, he worked in the sugar mill. And he had never seen the inside of a school before he came to Fiji or after he came to Fiji. But he very much interested in sort of learning. And the master said, you absent yesterday, why did you go to school? Oh sir, I was planting sugarcane. The next one, you absent yesterday, why? I was harvesting rice, the common thing. But my father, rice can rot on the farm, sugar can rot on the farm, doesn't matter. Nobody will get school, miss school. Kids must go to school 5 days a week full, see, no matter what. And that's how he got us educated. See, and we became bad farmers, but good lawyers and good doctors and good accountants. And the indentured laborers, Girmitiyas, were introduced in Trinidad before they were introduced in Fiji. And Sir Hercules Robinson has said that they made great success of sugar industry in Trinidad, as they do even today. So he tried to experiment with Indian Girmit labor. They used to enter into an agreement with the CSR company. The agreement was that the company will pay their fare and part of their expenses for their living in Fiji, give them accommodation and other facilities, but they agreed, signed an agreement to work for them for 5 years. 10 years work, then company will pay your fare. But most of them decided to stay back, and the agreement has, these conditions in agreement were not much better than what they were for slaves in America, so more or less.
In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thousands of Indians were brought to Fiji as indentured laborers, or Girmitiyas, to work in the sugarcane fields. From 1879 to 1916, more than 60,000 Indians were brought to Fiji under harsh and often exploitative conditions, and a total of 1.2 million Indians were sent to over 20 colonies, including Mauritius, Trinidad, South Africa, Suriname, and many more. The journey across the ocean was long and perilous, which included the death and illness of many. Once they arrived in Fiji, they found themselves living in overcrowded camps with inadequate food and minimal medical care. Their work on the sugar plantations was grueling. They had to work up to 10 to 12 hours a day, often much longer, in the sweltering heat, cutting sugarcane with machetes, a task that required tremendous physical strength and endurance. The pay they received was meager, often only 2 to 3 shillings a week or less, just enough to cover basic food and shelter. Many indentured workers lived in conditions that bordered on squalor, with families sharing small cramped spaces. They had little to no access to health care, and disease was rampant. These laborers, who were promised land and a better life, instead faced difficult working conditions, and a long struggle for social and economic rights. Most of them came from rural villages in North India, with little understanding of the foreign land they would call home. Many Girmitiyas felt betrayed by the promises made to them, but they had no choice but to work under these cruel conditions. If they dared to run, they were hunted down like criminals, punished, their hopes dashed to the ground. In 1913 alone, 623 Girmitiyas fled and 522 were recaptured. They were bound by contracts that lasted for 5 years, after which they could either renew their labor or leave at their own expense. But the reality was that their freedom was severely limited. If they attempted to escape, they were often caught, punished, or even imprisoned. Those who tried to fight for better conditions were met with resistance from plantation owners and colonial authorities. 229 Girmitiyas committed suicide between 1885 and 1919. But from the ashes of their suffering, families began to form communities. Drawing strength from their shared experiences, there was no thought of caste, birthplace, or even religion. A shipmate became a brother. They found solace in their accustomed traditions that they carried with them from India. But the wounds they carried ran deep, scarred, but with the power of an unbroken spirit that would last for generations. It was in this fragile space of survival and once voiceless resistance that a new chapter began to take shape. A chapter that would inspire a transformation, one sparked by hardship and the arrival of a movement that offered not only spiritual renewal, but a chance at something greater: dignity, equality, and hope. This was the unification of Arya Samaj in Fiji. Their inspiration came from Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati Ji, an individual who understood that true freedom begins with the mind. He rejected blind rituals and championed a Vedic education system built on logic, reasoning, and morality. From that seed of awakening, something was changing in Fiji. The pulse of quiet resistance and a united voice for education, equality, and cultural renewal. In as early as 1893, Arya Samaj made its way to Fiji. Pioneers like Sri Babu Manghal Singh Ji, Sri Gaji Pratap Singh Ji, Sri Nanku Sonar Ji, Sri Bihari Lal Ji, Pandit Shudat Sharma Ji, Sri Basdeo Rai Ji, Sri Inayat Hussain Ji, Sri Indra Narayan Ji, and Sri Tikaram Verma Ji recognized the need for reform in the Indian-Fijian community. They and others met in Samabula on the 25th of December 1904 to form the Arya Samaj of Fiji. The teachings of Arya Samaj provided a powerful alternative to the orthodox practices that many indentured people had been subjected to. and it ignited a movement of change. Maharshi Dayanandji understood that education was the key to social transformation, and the Indians of Fiji knew it as well. By 1912, outside of Fiji, the world was waking up. The indenture system stood exposed, branded as inhumane and unjust. The words of those formerly indentured, printed in newspapers far and wide, describing their experiences and those still ensnared. From the streets of India to the halls of London, pressure surged like a rising tide. The call was no longer for reform. It was for abolition.
भगवान तुम्हें शक्ति देंगे, अनुचित मत विश्राम करो, हालात से हार न मानो, आखिर तक संग्राम करो, आखिर तक संग्राम करो। पश्चिम के आकाश से छट गई, पश्चिम के आकाश से छट गई, वो देखो बादलों की भीड़, वो देखो बादलों की भीड़, अभी सूर्य नहीं अस्त हुआ, अभी सूर्य नहीं अस्त हुआ, हे अर्जुन उठो चलाओ तीर, हे अर्जुन उठो चलाओ तीर।
It began with a voice in Parliament. Calm, firm, and unyielding, Gopal Krishna Gokhaleji, the statesman, stood at the heart of British power and spoke for those who had none. He exposed the cruelty of the indenture system in Fiji. His words echoed across continents. Unshakable, he stood before the British crown and said, "This will end," reaching the ears of a man who would move nations. Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji turned the cause into a movement. From his printing press in South Africa, he amplified the suffering of the indentured. He rallied Indians across the world, turning injustice into a call to action. In Fiji, the battle needed a fighter on the ground, and Gandhiji sent one of the best. Manilal Doctorji helped establish Arya Samaj Mauritius. He believed that the greater presence of Arya Samaj in Fiji was the answer. Upon his arrival in Fiji, he was the highest educated person of color on the island. A lawyer with fire in his heart, Manilalji defended the oppressed, challenged the plantation owners, and in courtrooms where truth had long been silenced, he gave power to the people. But this story began long before lawyers and leaders arrived. It began with a man who was at the heart of it all, who knew the pain firsthand. Pandit Tota Ram Sandhyaji, an ex-indentured laborer, refused to let the darkness consume his past. He wrote My 21 Years in the Fiji Islands, a searing account of abuse, injustice, and survival. His testimony was not just a memoir, it was a weapon. He wrote what others feared to speak, and their pain became the battle cry of a revolution. 4 voices: a statesman, a liberator, a lawyer, a survivor. 4 men, 1 mission: universal freedom for Indians. It was in this fragile space of survival and quiet resistance that a new chapter began to take shape. It was not just about religious reform. It was about reclaiming their humanity. Arya Samaj taught that they were not bound by the shackles of caste, that they were not lesser because of the work they did. They were equal, and they deserved respect. The arrival of Arya Samaj in Fiji was truly transformative. While many in the Indian Fijian community had been struggling to hold on to their traditions in the face of adversity, Arya Samaj offered them a path forward, one that combined respect for their heritage with a call for social equality, education, and modernity. In the year 1916, during the historic first convention of the Arya Samaj in Fiji, a bold vision was born to build a school that would uplift an entire community through education. Both the Central Division and Western Division of Fiji vied for this honor, but it was the people of the Western Division who rose to the occasion. With unmatched passion and unwavering commitment, individuals rallied together, raising the necessary funds and proving their dedication to the cause. Their determination paid off. By 1918, the first Gurukul in Fiji stood proudly in Lautoka, a milestone that would mark the beginning of a new era in Fiji's educational history. But to this day, the most incredible fact is that the Fijian indenture system did not end until 2 years later. In 1920, these fearless individuals created a legacy for future generations while still in the midst of indenture. Arya Samaj was also instrumental in social reform. It challenged the entrenched practices of child marriage and the marginalization of women, encouraging girls to attend school. With the endowment of 9 acres from Kalu Singh Ji of Yalalevu Ba, they established the Arya Kanya Pathshala in 1938. Today, the Arya Pratindi Sabha of Fiji owns and operates 13 preschools, 14 primary schools, 6 high schools, and the University of Fiji. The legacy of Arya Samaj in Fiji is not just one of spiritual reform, but of a community's struggle to rise above unimaginable hardship. From the pain of the Girmitiyas to the strength of the generations that followed, this movement has helped shape a society where hope is no longer a distant dream, but a living, breathing reality. The indentured individuals that arrived on foreign soil and were cast into the cane fields of colonial countries, they endured a life of relentless labor and injustice under a brutal system. Yet from this crucible of suffering emerged a people unbroken and a force that defied history. Through resilience and solidarity, they transformed struggles into strength, building families, communities, and a future on distant lands. The Arya Samaj was a force of spiritual awakening, education, and reform that lit the way forward for many. Empowered by knowledge and united by purpose, the descendants of the Girmitiyas rose beyond the legacy of indenture, shaping Fiji's destiny. Their story is not one of victimhood, but of success. A legacy carved from pain, but defined by power. In the face of oppression, generations rose from those fields, educated, empowered, and determined. The children of the once indentured became leaders, teachers, and torch-bearers of a new identity. They carried forward not only the memory of their predecessors' sacrifices, but the momentum of a movement rooted in truth, equality, and spiritual resilience. Today, that journey spans oceans. In cities like Seattle, the descendants of those once bound by indenture now shape industries, educate communities, and build bhavans of their own. This is not just a history, it is a triumph, a living legacy carried by every voice that sings a bhajan in a foreign land and by every hand that builds where once there was only survival. Those indentured dreamed of a better tomorrow. The fire of their legacy, once kindled in the fields of Fiji, now blazes around the world, free and proud.